The battlefield was filled with smoke, fire, and screams. Lasers flew through the sky like deadly lightning. Explosions shook the ground as human soldiers fought alien invaders. No one had time to think. No one had time to care. But then, something strange happened, something no one expected. A young human soldier named Ethan was running through the burning ruins. He was dirty, tired, and bleeding from his arm. He held his rifle close, breathing fast, listening for danger. Then he saw her, a girl standing in the middle of the chaos. She wasn't human. Her skin was light blue and glowing softly. Her big silver eyes were full of fear, and she looked lost. She wasn't holding a weapon, and her small hands were shaking. She was an alien, but not like the ones trying to kill them. She looked young, helpless, like she didn't belong there. Ethan paused, confused. That's when the laser shot came. A bright red beam flew straight toward the alien girl. She didn't move, frozen in fear. Without thinking, Ethan jumped forward. He threw his body in front of her. Arms wide, the laser hit his chest, and he dropped to the ground. Gasping, the girl screamed. Kneeling beside him, she looked around, panicking, then touched his wound. Ethan tried to speak, but only blood came out. She pressed her hands on his chest, eyes glowing brighter. A strange, warm light came from her palms. Ethan felt the pain dull. Just a little. More blasts came, and she pulled him behind a fallen wall. She dragged him with surprising strength. The other aliens were retreating now, confused and scared. The battle was over in minutes. But Ethan was fading fast. He blacked out. His last memory was her face close to his, whispering something he couldn't understand. When Ethan opened his eyes again, everything was quiet. He was lying inside a dark cave. The air was cold. There was a soft fire near him, and he was wrapped in a strange blanket. He looked down and saw his chest was bandaged with glowing leaves. He blinked slowly, trying to remember what happened. Then, she appeared again, the alien girl. She walked in quietly. Holding a small bowl of steaming liquid, she sat next to him and offered it without a word. Ethan looked at her, weak and confused. "Why?" he whispered. "Why did you save me?" She didn't answer, just looked down. Ethan sipped the liquid. It was warm and sweet. His body still ached, but he felt stronger. "Where are we?" he asked, voice hoarse. She finally spoke, her voice soft and strange. "Safe. For now." Ethan stared at her. "You're one of them," he said slowly. "Why help me?" She looked away, pain flashing in her eyes. "I don't know," she whispered. "I just did." They sat in silence, the fire crackling between them. Outside, the wind howled and creatures screamed in the distance. Ethan's mind raced. If anyone found them, both would be shot. A human and an alien, hiding together. No one would believe the truth. No one would forgive them. He tried to sit up, but groaned in pain. She quickly helped him, her touch gentle. Ethan looked into her eyes. Really looked this time. She was scared, but there was kindness too. "Who are you?" he asked. She hesitated, then said, "Zari." Ethan nodded slowly. "I'm Ethan." For a moment, they just sat there, staring at each other, two enemies. Now trapped together. Outside, the war still raged, but inside the cave, something had changed. Ethan had taken a blast for her. Zari had risked everything to save him. Neither of them understood why, but deep down, they both knew this was only the beginning. Zari stood and walked to the entrance of the cave. She looked out at the dark sky, her voice low. "They will come looking for us." Ethan nodded. Let them. He didn't know what he was saying. He didn't know why he felt like this, but for some reason, he trusted her, and maybe, just maybe, she trusted him too. The fire flickered as the night grew colder. In that hidden place, a soldier and an alien girl began a story, one filled with danger, choices, and something neither of them expected: hope Asterisk, the cold wind outside howled like a beast, but inside the cave, the silence between the human and the alien girl was louder. Zari sat beside the fire, staring into the flames as if they held answers. Ethan, still sore and bandaged, kept his eyes on her, unsure of what he was feeling. She had saved his life, even after he'd risked his to protect hers. Neither of them spoke much. But something strange had started growing between them. Not friendship, yet not trust, but something in between. Something quiet and dangerous. Ethan's voice finally broke the silence. "Where are we exactly?" he asked. Zari didn't look at him, just answered softly, "Old mines under the mountains. Long abandoned, your people know about this place," he said, his tone careful. She shook her head slowly. "No one comes here. Not even them." There was something heavy in her words, like she wasn't just talking about the location. Ethan studied her face in the flickering light, so different from his own, yet not unkind. Zari reached into a small bag and pulled out dried fruit and strips of glowing root. She handed him some without a word. Ethan took it, his fingers brushing against hers by accident. She pulled away quickly, her silver eyes wide. But she didn't move further. They ate in silence, listening to the cracking of the fire and distant thunder. Then, softly, Zari said, "They'll be searching for me." "And for you." Ethan nodded slowly. "Yeah, I figured." He looked at her again, his voice low. "Why are they after you, Zari? You saved a human, not killed one." She hesitated, her lips tightening as if holding in pain. "I wasn't supposed to be here," she finally said. "I was only meant to observe. Map the land, report human defenses." Ethan's heart sank. "So, you're a scout," Zari nodded once. "Not proud, not sorry, just honest. I didn't mean to hurt anyone," she whispered. "But when I saw you jump in front of that blast, something changed." Ethan leaned back, rubbing his face with one hand. "Great," he muttered. "I threw myself in front of a spy." Zari's voice trembled. "I didn't ask you to." "I know," he said, staring at the roof of the cave. "That's the scary part." The silence returned, thick with tension and questions. Suddenly, a soft beep echoed in the cave. Zari's eyes widened, and she reached for a small glowing device near her belt. She pressed it against the wall, and a screen lit up with static. Voices came through, crackling with static and fear. Location compromised. Possible human interaction. Orders are clear. Eliminate both. Ethan stood quickly, wincing as pain shot through his chest. Zari dropped the device and looked at him, panic creeping into her voice. "They're coming. How long?" he asked. "Minutes," she said, grabbing her small satchel and reaching for his arm. "You can't walk fast," she said, "but I know a way." Ethan nodded, letting her help him to his feet. Their bodies were close, their breaths heavy. And fast, Zari led him through a narrow tunnel at the back of the cave. It was dark, wet, and smelled like old stone and metal. "Where does this go?" Ethan asked, holding onto the wall, somewhere safe. "I think," Zari answered, "but we'll have to trust the dark behind them." The cave shook from a distant blast. They found the entrance, Ethan said through clenched teeth. Zari didn't reply. She only moved faster, her glow dimmed to avoid detection. Leaving Ethan to follow her silhouette in the dark, for almost an hour, they crawled, limped, and slid through tight passages. Then, finally, light. A small opening led to a cliffside covered in green vines and thick mist. They came out, breathless, muddy, and shivering, but alive. Ethan collapsed against the stone wall, laughing weakly. Zari just stared at the valley below, her voice cold now. "They'll never stop hunting us." Ethan looked up at her, eye steady. "Then we keep moving." She turned to him, shocked by his calm voice. "You still trust me?" "I don't know if I do," he said honestly, "but I don't trust anyone else more." Zari looked away quickly. her hands trembling slightly. No one had ever said that to her, not her own kind. Not even her command leader. The human didn't know her, didn't understand her world, and yet he walked beside her. Not because he had to, but because he chose to. That frightened her more than any weapon ever could. As the sun broke through the morning mist, Zari stepped forward and whispered something in her native tongue. Ethan didn't ask what it meant, but her voice carried weight, like a promise. He followed her down the slope, unaware that every step they took now was being watched from far. Above, a pair of eyes blinked in the shadows. Their location had been marked. The hunt had truly begun. The price on her head was announced before the sun had fully risen, a bounty so high that even her own people turned silent in shock. Dead or alive, the message said. The alien girl and her human protector must be stopped. Every corner of the quadrant heard the call, and many listened with greedy eyes. But Zari and Ethan didn't know yet. They were too busy running, too busy breathing, too busy surviving. A thick fog hung over the valley like a curtain. The grass was wet, and each step left a trail behind them. Zari kept glancing over her shoulder, as if feeling eyes she couldn't see. Ethan's chest still ached, but he said nothing. He kept moving, one step at a time. His body cold, his heart beating fast. They reached a ruined transport station, long forgotten, half buried in moss. It was quiet there, too quiet. Zari motioned for him to stay hidden while she checked ahead. Ethan waited behind a broken wall, scanning the horizon. His rifle was gone, his armor torn, but he still felt like a soldier. He still felt like he had something to protect. Then he heard its footsteps, not hers, fast, heavy. And getting closer, he ducked low, holding his breath. Two shadows appeared beyond the wall, whispering in a strange tongue. One of them had a scanner. The other carried a net gun. Bounty hunters. Ethan's heart pounded. He grabbed a rock and waited just before they turned the corner. Something flashed above them, blue and sharp. Zari dropped from the ledge, her blade silent and clean. In seconds, one was out cold. The other stunned with a shock device. Ethan stared, stunned. She looked different in that moment, not scared, not kind, but fierce. Zari turned to him, eyes glowing faintly. "They'll keep coming," she said. "We need to go." They took the hunter's gear and moved on, heading deeper into the wild as they walked. Ethan looked at her carefully. "You've done that before," he said. "You're trained." "Us?" Zari didn't answer right away. "I was meant to be more than just a scout," she said, "but I failed my mission." Ethan wanted to ask more, but her tone told him not to. Instead, he changed the subject. "Ever eaten human food?" Zari blinked, confused. "I once tasted something called cheese. It made my tongue numb." Ethan laughed for the first time in days. "That's fair," he said. "Not everyone's ready for cheese." She looked at him, puzzled, then smiled a little. It was the first time he saw her smile, not out of politeness, but for real. They sat under a large tree, sharing dry rations. Zari handed him a glowing fruit, and he gave her a small bar of chocolate. She bit into it and froze. "What is this?" she asked, eyes wide. "Earth magic," Ethan joked. "Don't overdose for a few minutes." They forgot they were being hunted. They forgot about war, sides, and commands. Just a human and an alien sitting together, trading food and tired jokes. But peace doesn't last. Not in times like these. A drone buzzed overhead, almost too quiet to hear. Zari spotted it first. Grabbing Ethan and pulling him into the shadows, it scanned the area, paused, then moved on. Zari cursed softly. "They know we're alive," she whispered, "and they're getting closer." Later that night, while Ethan slept, Zari climbed to a cliffside and opened her comlink. A low voice answered. "Zari, you're still alive." She stayed quiet for a moment, then said, I need to know. Why is there a bounty on me too? The voice hesitated, then replied coldly. You saved a human, I saved a life, she said firmly. You betrayed. Your people, came the reply. The council has made its choice. The line went dead. And Zari sat there for a long time. Her hands shook, but not from fear, from rage and sadness. She had no home now, not with them, and maybe not even with the humans. But down in the cave below, Ethan turned in his sleep and mumbled her name. Zari looked down at him, her eyes soft again. He didn't care about sides. He only cared that she had saved him. The stars above blinked like old memories, somewhere out there. More bounty hunters were already preparing to track them. They would come with weapons, traps, and orders to kill. But Zari knew now she wouldn't run forever. Next time, she would fight. Not for her people, not for duty, but for him. Asterisk, they didn't see the net trap until it was too late. One step, one wrong patch of ground and the wires snapped upward. Ethan's body was yanked into the air, tangled. Upside down, Zari turned fast, slicing the ropes, but before Ethan could drop, a sharp dart hit her in the back. She gasped, stumbling. The blue light in her eyes flickering. Two masked figures came out of the trees. Cloaked in mud and shadow, they didn't speak. Just moved like hunters who had done this 1,000 times. Ethan hit the ground hard, trying to grab something to fight with, but one figure kicked him in the side, knocking the air from his lungs. Zari tried to rise, her limbs weak from the tranquilizer. She reached for Ethan, but her hand dropped just inches away from his. Everything went black when Ethan opened his eyes. He was chained to a wall in a cold steel room. A buzzing sound filled the air, and the walls shimmered with some kind of electric field. His chest burned against the old wound, screaming in pain. Across the room, Zari was trapped inside a clear tube. Floating in some liquid, her eyes were closed, wires stuck to her skin. Her body barely moving. Ethan shouted, banged on the wall. But no one came. Then a door slid open, and a tall man stepped inside. He wore a military badge, human, not alien. But his eyes were colder than any alien Ethan had ever seen. You're awake, the man said, voice flat. You're lucky. We almost left you behind. Ethan spat on the floor. What did you do to her? The officer tilted his head, almost amused. She's not your concern. He said, she's an enemy asset. She saved my life. Ethan growled. She's a traitor to her kind, the officer replied. And you? You're just confused. They showed him a video. Ethan carrying Zari, protecting her, laughing with her, looks bad. The officer said, but you're a soldier. We know you can be forgiven. All you have to do is testify. Say she tricked you. Say she used you. Ethan's fists clenched. You want me to lie? The officer smiled coldly. We want you to come home. Ethan sat in silence, heart pounding outside the room. Guards talked about moving Zari to a science base. They wanted to study her, break her apart, understand her DNA. Ethan's mind raced, searching for a way out. That night, a young technician entered the room. She moved quickly, glancing around nervously. Ethan.
Ah,
she whispered. He looked up, surprised. Who are you? I saw what she did for you, the girl said. I don't believe she's a monster. She pressed a small tool to his cuffs, and the lock clicked. You have 10 minutes, she whispered. After that, I'm not responsible. Ethan ran. Limping, heart hammering, he reached the chamber where Zari floated. Alarms were starting, red lights flashing. He slammed his hand on the emergency release. The fluid drained, the glass slid open. And Zari collapsed into his arms. She coughed, her eyes fluttering open. Ethan. She whispered. I got you, he said. Now let's get out of here. They ran through narrow halls, chased by shouts and boots. Zari was still weak, but she moved with him. Trusting his grip, they found a hangar with old ships one looked. Barely functional, Ethan pulled her inside, hitting buttons until the engine sparked. Come on, he muttered. The door burst open behind them, soldiers pouring in. Zari sat up and slammed her palm into the controls. The ship roared to life, jerking forward as lasers flew past them. The escape was rough, the ship spinning, engines coughing, but they made it into the sky. Zari fell back, eyes closed, her head on Ethan's shoulder. You didn't betray me, she whispered. I never will, he said softly. Below them, the base vanished in clouds and dust. But the memory of that room, those chains, and the choice Ethan had made would never fade. He didn't know where they were going next, but he knew this: he would never let them take her again. And somewhere deep in her heart, Zari felt something she had never known. Not just trust, not just survival, but the beginning of something strange and powerful, something that made her want to live, not just escape. The war was still out there. But for now, they had each other, and that meant they still had a chance. The crowd watching the trial was silent, but their eyes burned with judgment. Ethan stood in the center of the glass chamber, surrounded by cameras and guards. The air was thick with whispers, screens flashing headlines like poison. Human soldier defends alien traitor. Is he a hero? Or a traitor himself? He could hear it all, but he didn't flinch. Behind the clear wall, Zari sat alone in a locked chair, wrists bound by glowing cuffs. She looked pale, her silver eyes dim, her voice taken from her by silence, not chains. She hadn't spoken since they were captured again, and this time there would be no secret escape. Ethan looked at the panel of commanders: 3 humans, 1 alien ambassador, and a machine judge with a cold, glowing face. They asked him again, their words sharp like blades, "Why did you risk your life to protect the enemy?" Ethan's voice was calm, but firm. "She's not the enemy," he said. "She's more human than most of you." Gasps filled the room, and someone cursed under their breath. The alien ambassador leaned forward, studying him carefully. "She was sent to spy on us," he said slowly. "Do you deny this?" "No," Ethan replied. "She told me herself." "Then you admit she was part of a plan to weaken Earth." "She was," Ethan said, "but she didn't follow through." He pointed at Zari, who didn't even lift her head. "She had the chance to kill me, leave me to die, but she saved me. She could have run when I was wounded, but she carried me to safety. She chose mercy over war." The room buzzed with murmurs, but the commanders remained stone-faced. "And you?" the machine judge asked, its voice a metallic echo. "You abandoned orders, went off-grid, and protected her against your mission." "I made a choice," Ethan said. "A choice to save someone who didn't deserve death." The judge paused, then spoke to Zari directly. "Do you have anything to say in your defense?" She didn't answer. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. The judge looked back at the panel. "Then we moved to sentencing." Before they could finish, a screen near the ceiling blinked. A live signal forced its way into the system. Everyone turned as grainy footage appeared: security camera logs from a restricted alien ship. The room went silent as the video played. Zari stood in the hallway of her own command ship, arguing with another alien. He shouted, demanding she release a data package, trigger the orbital strike. He yelled. Zari shook her head, placing her body between the command console and him. "There are children in that zone," she said. "I won't do it." He pulled a weapon, aimed it at her. Zari disarmed him in one smooth move, smashing the console. Instead, the screen cracked with static, then cut to black. The courtroom gasped again. Louder this time, the alien ambassador leaned forward. Stunned, "You stopped your own people," he whispered. "You disobeyed a direct war order, Zari." Finally looked up, her voice soft but clear. "I didn't want to be a monster." Ethan turned to the panel, his voice rising. She stopped a mass attack, saved a soldier from an enemy side, and asked for nothing. If that's a crime, then maybe we're the ones on trial. The panel didn't speak, not for a long time. Finally, the machine judge's eyes dimmed for a moment, then lit back up. Under review, it said. Final judgment delayed. Guards stepped forward, unlocking Zari's cuffs, but not setting her free. They escorted her and Ethan to a holding room. With no chains this time, they sat on a bench, side by side, not touching, but not apart either. Zari looked down, her voice barely a whisper. "You didn't have to fight for me." "I know," Ethan replied. "But I wanted to." She blinked slowly, then turned her face toward him. "In my world, no one defends the weak." "Well," Ethan said, with a tired smile. "Welcome to mine." Through the glass, they could see people gathered outside. Some angry, some curious, some unsure. But for the first time, Zari wasn't afraid of being seen, not because she felt safe, but because she wasn't alone anymore. Outside the station, a shadow watched from a rooftop. Someone who didn't care about justice or truth. Someone who had just received new orders. If the court didn't kill Zari, someone else would. The bomb was silent, hidden behind a wall panel. Set to go off in 30 minutes. No one in the holding facility knew it was there. Not the guards, not the judges, not even Ethan or Zari. But the man who planted it, he was already gone, already counting the credits paid to make sure she didn't live to see freedom. Zari didn't know death was coming. She sat by the window of her cell, eyes locked on the horizon, where two suns were setting behind a layer of thick clouds. Ethan paced nearby, restless, too quiet for a man who had just survived a public trial. Something inside him felt wrong, not fear, but a whisper in the back of his mind. He looked at Zari and saw it in her tunies without a reason. That's when the lights flickered. Only once, Zari stood slowly, her skin reacting to the shift in the air. She looked toward the hallway, then back at Ethan. "Something's wrong," she said. In the control room, the young technician from earlier, the one who had once freed them, was back at her station. She noticed the power spike and frowned. Her fingers flew across the panel, tracing the signal. She paused when she saw the timer, blinking red on a hidden floor schematic. Her heart stopped. 12 minutes left. She ran from the room, not even bothering to explain. Security tried to stop her, but she shouted louder than any of them, "There's a bomb in the lower wall. Everyone evacuatin'." Oh. Inside the cell, Ethan heard the alarm just as red lights began to flash. A robotic voice spoke calmly, too calmly. "Warning. Detonation in 10 minutes. Zari turned to him with wide eyes. "They're trying to kill us," she whispered. Ethan grabbed her arm. "We're not dying in a cage." The doors didn't open, but the floor vent shook. Ethan kicked it until it snapped loose. Zari climbed in first, and he followed, crawling through narrow metal tunnels. The air was hot, thick, shaking with each second that passed. They emerged in a storage bay, just as the countdown hit 5 minutes. Soldiers ran past them, some shouting, some panicking. Zari pointed toward a side corridor that leads to the medical wing. She said, "There's an old escape hatch there." They moved fast, dodging crates, slipping past distracted guards. The floor rumbled beneath them as emergency systems failed one by one. In the med lab, a familiar face turned in surprise. It was the doctor who had once helped them escape. "You again?" he said, breathless. "Of course it's you," Ethan shouted. "There's a bomb. Point us to the hatch." The doctor didn't argue, just unlocked a back door and opened a panel in the floor. "Good luck," he said, then ran in the opposite direction. Ethan and Zari dropped into the dark shaft, sliding down steel rails until they hit the bottom. Above them, the walls trembled with the sound of systems collapsing. They ran down a tunnel that smelled of dust and forgotten war. They burst out into the open desert just as the building behind them exploded. A wall of heat threw them forward. Sand blasting their faces, they hit the ground hard, holding on to each other as fire lit the sky. The entire holding facility was gone, reduced to smoke and flame. For a long time, they didn't speak. Zari sat beside Ethan, covered in ash. Her voice was low, shaking. "That wasn't an accident, no," Ethan said, wiping blood from his brow. "That was a message, somewhere far away." A ship hovered quietly above the clouds. Inside, a masked figure watched the flames and smiled. "They survived," someone whispered. The figure turned away, voice like ice. "Then we try again." Back in the desert, Zari reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device she had hidden during the escape. Ethan leaned closer, frowning. "What is that?" She hesitated, then said, "Something I wasn't supposed to steal." She pressed it, and a map projected in the air showing a hidden lab deep beneath the mountains. Zari looked at Ethan, her voice firm. "If we reach this place, we can end this." Ethan nodded, standing slowly. "Then let's finish what we started." The night sky stretched above them, black and full of stars. They were alone, hunted and nearly killed. But they were alive, and together they still had a fighting chance. No one believed the hidden lab actually existed. It wasn't on maps. It wasn't in databases. And even Zari thought it was just a myth whispered during military training. But the map in her hands glowed with certainty. And the enemies hunting them knew it was real, because now they were sending everything they had. Drones scanned the skies, hunters moved through the sand, and ships hovered in silence above the horizon. Zari and Ethan didn't stop, not even. When their legs burned and their lungs cried for rest, they were getting close. They could feel it in their bones. The desert ended at a wall of stone, tall and cracked like the back of some ancient beast. Zari placed her palm on a rock shaped like a triangle. The stone pulsed with light, and slowly a door appeared made of energy and dust. Ethan stared in awe, but Zari didn't pause. She stepped through, and he followed. The tunnel inside was cold, smooth, and glowing with a soft blue hue. They walked for what felt like hours, deeper into the earth. Then the hallway opened into a massive underground chamber. A giant machine stood at the center, wrapped in vines, rust, and glowing script. Zari stared at it like a ghost had just risen from the dead. "This," she whispered, "was meant to end the war before it began." Ethan stepped forward, puzzled. "A weapon?" Zari shook her head. "A cure." She walked up to the console and placed the stolen device into a slot. The machine hummed, came to life. Lights blinking across its surface during the first battles, she explained. "Our scientists found a way to link alien and human DNA, not to destroy, but to heal." Ethan watched as a hologram of two figures, one human. One alien appeared above the machine. They reached for each other, and the machine glowed brighter. "But the Council destroyed the project," Zari continued. "They feared peace more than war. They erased everything except this place." Suddenly, the ceiling shook, dust falling from above. "They found us," Ethan said, drawing a blade. Zari looked at him. Then at the console. "It's not finished." She said, "It needs a living bond to activate fully." "What does that mean?" Ethan asked. "It means we have to connect," she said, placing her hand in his. Ethan stared at her, understanding without needing more words. She trusted him, and he trusted her, together. They stepped into the beam of light at the center of the chamber. A wave of warmth surrounded them. The machine scanned their bodies, their hearts, their blood. It didn't see species, only unity, and then it activated. Above ground, ships froze in the air. Weapons stopped working, and drones dropped from the sky. Across the region, devices overloaded and shut down. But the message had already been sent broadcast across every channel, every language, a message of peace triggered by the connection of two who should have been enemies. The soldiers outside stormed in. Too late. They found Ethan and Zari standing unharmed, glowing faintly, holding hands in the center of the machine. No one fired, no one dared. The air itself had changed. They felt it in their bones, something had shifted back on Earth. The commanders watched the broadcast in stunned silence. On Zari's homeworld, the council shattered as citizens demanded answers. Peace didn't come all at once. But the lie that humans and aliens could never stand together had been broken. Weeks later, Ethan stood by a quiet lake under a new sky. Zari sat beside him, her hand resting gently on his. They were no longer hunted, no longer chained to orders or fear. They were symbols. Yes, but more than that, they were free. Zari looked at him with a soft smile. "You jumped in front of a laser for me," she said, "and I never thanked you properly." Ethan chuckled. "You dragged me through caves, broke me out of prison, and saved the world. I think we're even." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "No," she whispered, "because now I want to stay." He turned to her, eyes warm. "I want that too." And as the wind blew softly across the water, they both knew it was worth the risk. Every wound, every step, every moment TT had led to this, not just the end of a war, but the beginning of something new, together.